Alabama soldiers and the similarities between Confederate and Union records. We will further discuss pension applications and where to find them, as well as additional online resources for tracing Civil War service history and service. Before we begin, we would like to make an announcement that Food for Thought will be occurring on April 21st at 12, and the title of that presentation is going to be Threads of Evidence, Investigating a Confederate Flag Remnant. The presenters will be Georgia Ann Hudson and Ryan Blocker, who are also staff members here at the Archives. So, beginning our presentation here. So, where to begin? If you don't know what regiment your ancestors served in, but you believe that they served in an Alabama unit, try checking the Alabama Civil War Service database on our website. You can visit our website at archives.alabama.gov, click Search Our Collections, then click on the Civil War Soldiers database. If you prefer, you can also use the link on this slide to access the database directly. All links mentioned in this presentation will be put in the comments section for your convenience before the presentation is over. So once you have the database pulled up, I suggest searching for last name only, then doing a Control F search of the page. You can also simply scroll down to find the name of your ancestor. Remember, in searching for Civil War documents, the names are often misspelled and initials are often used. The database helps you to see how many possible results for men of the same name there may be, and when county of enlistment is provided, it helps to narrow down possible results for your ancestor. Keep in mind that this database is not exhaustive and does not include everyone who served. The National Park Service Soldiers and Sailors database is similar to our ADAH Civil War Service database, as you can type in a name and potentially find what regiment a soldier served with. The database includes all available soldiers from not only the Confederate states and units, but also the Union states and regiments as well. The website also includes brief regimental history information. If you don't begin your search with the knowledge of which regiment and company your ancestor served in, you may end up with several men whose names and other information may fit who you are trying to find. One tool to help determine regimental history and company information is Brewer's Brief Historical Sketches of Military Organizations, which can be accessed on our website. Each entry for a regiment includes a brief history of the regiment's Civil War organization and action, as well as a list of captains and counties from which the companies came. These companies are listed in the order of regiment organization. So if you look at a list of the companies, you can count down A, B, C, D, and know that Company A was organized in Tallapoosa County, Company C was organized in Lowndes County, etc. I have handwritten the company letters on the image to the right to illustrate how this works. So an example, if you find records for someone who served in the 1st Alabama Infantry, Company H, you can look at this list and see that this company of the regiment was organized in Barber County. This can not only give you information about where a regiment is from, but can help you narrow down what regiments and companies would be most likely for your ancestor to have served in. Don't rule out the possibility of your ancestor serving in regiments raised in nearby counties. So once you've attempted to gather some ideas of your ancestor's service, a good next stop is Fold 3. When you visit Fold 3, you should see a similar screen to the one we have here. Thumbnail images are designed for each military era or conflict. Clicking on them leads you to a search screen that will allow you to go through the military records for the war you are searching. You will note that there are 3 applicable buttons here for U.S. Civil War, U.S. Civil War Union, and U.S. Civil War Confederate records. Clicking on the circled thumbnail option for U.S. Civil War Confederacy leads to the search screen you see here. From here, you can search using names, record type, place, and dates. Begin your searches with minimum information to avoid missing applicable records. Fold 3 records can include Confederate service records, Union service records, pension applications, Confederate amnesty records, Southern claims applications for Alabama, Confederate citizens files, and Confederate casualty reports. Confederate service record files can include information such as the dates of service, the names of engagements participated in, hospital records, prisoner of war information, pay information, death information, and can even note the next of kin if the soldier has died. Service index cards can provide clues for further ways to search for your soldier. They include regiment and company information, rank, and can provide alternate names or spellings of names that the soldier went by or was filed under. The See Also section is circled here, and you will note that it is blank for this soldier. If alternate names were available, they would typically be listed here. Here are two examples of muster roll cards. These cards are part of service records files that exist on Fold 3. These show the soldier's name as being James E. Couch and provide his rank, company, and regiment information as being a private in Company B of the 3rd Alabama Infantry. The records also show the date and location of his enlistment as being April 24, 1861, in Mobile, Alabama. The period, or duration of service, is stated as 12 months. The circled dates on these cards are the dates of pay and show to what time he has been paid for. If there are missing cards, or if it appears that a soldier died or left service, the dates of pay show you that a soldier was still alive up until that date at least. Records of illness and hospitalization can show up on a few different types of records, including the muster rolls, hospital rolls, and regimental return records, just to name a few. This first muster roll on the left has Couch's status as absent with remarks noting he is sick at the Naval Hospital. The card on the right is dated April 28, 1862, and notes the location as being Mosley's Church. It is noted in the remarks section of the card that Couch is being discharged due to physical disability. Interestingly, it appears that Couch's service with the 3rd Alabama and subsequent medical discharge did not end his Civil War service. Several months later, in September of 1862, he appears as J.E. Couch on a muster roll record for Company K of the 21st Alabama Infantry. Records indicate that his brother also served with this regiment after having initially served in another regiment as well. This time, he was enlisted at Fort Morgan for the period of the war. You will note that I have circled a note on the record at the left that says "for bounty." This would be why Couch enlisted a second time, as he could now have entered to collect the bounty instead of having to enlist to fulfill his own draft obligation. Muster roll records can take more than one form and can also be found on Ancestry.com in the collection Alabama U.S. Civil War Muster Rolls, 1861 to 1865. Here we find J.E. Couch on the roll of prisoners of war. The top of the card on the right lists his rank and regiment information, followed with the information that his residence is now Shubuta, Clark County, Mississippi, a county bordering Alabama. The middle area of the card explains how Couch became a prisoner of war. It reads, as part of Company K, 21st Alabama Regiment, Holtzclaw's Brigade, Confederate States Army, commanded by First Lieutenant William I. Brainerd, surrendered at Citronella, Alabama, by Lieutenant General R. Taylor, CSA, to Major General E.R.S. Canby, USA, May 4, 1865, and paroled at Meridian, Mississippi, May 13, 1865. The final record in his file indicates that Couch appeared on a receipt roll for clothing issued on July 10, 1863, and signed with a mark, meaning he was probably unable to write or read. Many soldiers were not as fortunate as Mr. Couch and were unable to make it out of the war alive. George Geck was one such soldier who died during the war. On the record to the left, you will note that he is a prisoner of war at Fort Delaware, Delaware. He was captured at Champion Hill, May 17, 1863, arrived at the prison on June 9, 1863, and died June 24th. The record to the left indicates that he was captured on May 16th, one day before the other record is dated. The record also notes in the remarks section that he died in hospital at Fort Delaware on June 24th, 1863. As a side note, Mr. Geck's last name, when listed correctly, is Geck, yet the records here list him as Gake, and other records have him listed with a range of other spellings. It is important to keep all alternate spellings in mind when searching for service records. When applicable, desertion records may also be part of a soldier's files. Okay, so it looks like my slides didn't fast forward as I thought they had. So this one right here is showing the claims of deceased soldiers that mentions the father's name. So when applicable, desertion records may also be part of a soldier's files. Sometimes an unauthorized yet temporary leave of absence was listed as desertion, even though the soldier later rejoined his unit. Such unauthorized leave was particularly tempting for a soldier if the Army was marching through or near his home area. A variety of issues could tempt a soldier to temporary desertion, such as family illness, hardship, or deaths. However, if you find no further record after desertion has been noted, it is most likely that the soldier truly and permanently deserted. Sometimes you will find deserter records in the same file with hospital records where a soldier's hospital status had not been accurately reported to his commander. Deserters were not eligible for pensions, so it is useful to check pension records to attempt verification of desertion or continued service. While Alabama was part of the Confederacy, there were a significant number of soldiers from the state who wanted to enlist in the Union. Fold 3 includes Union records that provide similar information to what has been discussed here in regard to Confederate records. Of particular interest for Alabama Union service records research is the Fold 3 collection, Civil War Service Records, Union, Alabama. This collection includes records for the 1st Alabama Cavalry, a unit that not only included soldiers from Alabama, but also from Georgia. Additional Union enlistees from Alabama would have found their way into random Union regiments and can be harder to track down. You can try searching for your ancestor within Union regiments from states closest to where your ancestor lived. North Alabama soldiers, particularly, may be found in Tennessee or even Kentucky Union regiments. What regiment your ancestor ended up in can depend on what opportunities your ancestor had to join and where the opportunities might have been located. Many free African Americans, as well as those who had escaped enslavement, also joined the United States Colored Troops, or USCT. Determining which regiment they join can be difficult, but the use of keyword searches using Alabama can prove helpful in finding those who noted their birth or residence in the state. Some applicable collections on Fold 3 include Civil War Service Records, Union, Colored Troops, 56 through 138th Infantry, Civil War Service Records, Union, USCT, Miscellaneous Cards, and Civil War Service Records, Union, USCT, Miscellaneous Personal Papers. Widows' pension files for USCT soldiers' wives can also be found in the Civil War Widows' Pension collections. As I mentioned earlier, Ancestry.com has muster rolls. Ancestry's rolls are taken directly from microfilm here at ADAH. In addition to these records, Ancestry has the Alabama U.S. Census of Confederate Soldiers 1907 and 1921. Ancestry service records collections typically link with Fold 3, so if you don't have access to Fold 3 through your library or a personal account, you will not be able to view them. Ancestry also has 2 collections regarding soldiers and widows' pension applications. Following the Civil War, most areas of the South were poverty-stricken. Soldiers who had been maimed or disabled in the war faced particular challenges in continuing to provide for their families and themselves. States of the former Confederacy were each responsible for the help they offered the soldiers of their state. This is why the pension system was created by an act of the Alabama State Legislature. There were several acts of the state legislature that built the basis for the Confederate pension system in Alabama. As early as 1864, an act making an appropriation to aid indigent families of soldiers in the military service from the state of Alabama was put into place. The text can be found in Act 2 of the 1864 session. A later piece of legislation further addressed veteran needs and was passed during the 1866-67 session. Additional acts were passed in the 75-76 legislative session, the 76-77 session, and the 78-79 session. The first of two particularly influential pieces of legislation on the subject was an act for the relief of needy Confederate soldiers and sailors, residents of Alabama, who from wounds or other cause are now unable to earn a livelihood, and for the widows of such as were killed or died in said war and have not since remarried. That was passed in the 1890-91 session. The act was followed by the much larger and more comprehensive act passed during the 1898-99 legislative session. An act for the relief of needy Confederate soldiers and sailors, resident citizens of Alabama, and their widows was a 9-page piece of legislation that spelled out details of eligibility, administration, and organization of a pension system for Confederate soldiers and their widows. You can find the digitized version of these acts, and they are keyword searchable on Internet Archive. The most useful collection for pension research is the Ancestry.com collection, Alabama, Texas, and Virginia U.S. Confederate Pensions, 1884 to 1958. Pension records for the soldiers or their widows who served from these states during the Civil War are contained in this collection. Searchable by first and last names of the soldier or widow, images of the records themselves are provided. This collection does not provide a complete index of all pensioners, as the records are compiled from different states at different times and by different offices after the Civil War. Also, not all soldiers who fought for the Confederacy are registered. However, some information on missing files or rejected applications can be found in this collection. Besides names, residences, and dates, a pension file can yield information about the life circumstances of the veteran. Details can include how long they resided in the state where the pension was collected, where they were born, their address and occupation, what command they served under, length of time served, and the name of the company. Pension applications were typically submitted to the state where the veteran was residing, as opposed to the state where they enlisted and served, which can be different if they had moved to a different state. Documents can include applications, correspondence, affidavits, widow applications for reclassification, and other related materials. Another collection to check on Ancestry.com is entitled Alabama U.S. Confederate Pension and Service Records, 1862 to 1947. This collection includes receipt records and lists of eligible pensioners. One term you will notice in pension records is class. To explain that, we can turn to Act 421 of the 1898-99 term, which is the main act for establishing the pension system, as I mentioned earlier. Section 12, Act 421 states, "Be it further enacted that the beneficiaries of this act shall be divided in 4 classes as follows. Soldiers or sailors who are totally blind or who have lost 2 limbs or the entire use thereof shall be class number 1. Those who have lost a leg above the knee or an arm above the elbow shall be class number 2. Those who have lost a foot or hand or the entire use thereof shall be classed number 3, and all others, including the widows, shall be class number 4. Each class shall participate in the division of the pension fund in the proportion hereinafter provided. Class 1, soldiers, sailors who are blind, have lost 2 limbs or entire use of 2 limbs. Class 2, loss of a leg above the knee or arm above the elbow. Class 3, loss of a foot or hand or entire use of either. Class 4, all others including widows. To the first class 60 cents, to the second class 50 cents, to the third class 40 cents, and to the fourth class 30 cents. provided that in no 1 year shall the first class receive over $60, the second class over 50, the third class over 40, nor the fourth class over 30. Any amount remaining in the fund after each class shall be by the auditor certified into the general fund of the state. So you will note that this stipulates that no amount over 50, 40, $30 will be given to any pensioner. That amount could be exceptionally lower depending on how much the budget was for each given year. Here we have a typical pension application form. At the top, in tiny print, are the words, "For the relief of needy Confederate soldiers and sailors, residents of Alabama who from wounds or other cause are now unable to earn a livelihood by labor, under Act approved February 13th, 1891 and amended February 1895. We have the county of residence, the name of the probate judge, the name of the applicant, B.S. Smith, his rank, private, his company, D, and his regiment, 28th Georgia Cavalry. Remember, applicants applied to their state of residence, not the state they served with. The application further states, he is now afflicted with lung trouble and epilepsy, and in consequence of such sickness he is physically unable to earn a livelihood by labor. The application also stipulates that he is now a bona fide resident of Alabama and that he has been such for at least 1 year prior to this date. The application also has a line for his post office address, a line for his business information, and a line for describing his taxable property that has been left blank, probably due to lack of property. To be eligible, the following had to be true regarding his taxable property. It couldn't be worth in the aggregate more than $500, that his salary or gross income does not amount to $500 per year, and that his wife does not own a separate estate of more than $500. This application was approved by the Board of Examiners and by the Judge of Probate for DeKalb County on July 6, 1898. Sometimes a soldier applied more than once for a pension. This could be due to initial denial of his claim, a change in class, a move to a different county, or other issues that arose. This is basically the same application form with a few different or additional details provided. In addition to the same information from earlier files, we see that in 1862 he was stationed at Camp Harrelson in Georgia, and the application further states that while there he contracted epilepsy and afterward an abscess of the lung. Here we have an inventory form that provides a look at his financial state and lists items that he owned. The application notes that he doesn't own land, he doesn't own any horses, mules, cattle, hogs, sheep, or goats. He doesn't own any guns. He does own one clock valued at $3. His household and kitchen furniture is valued at $40. He doesn't have a bicycle or vehicle, nor mechanical farming tools or implements. His total property is valued at $43. Now we move to widows' pension records. In addition to looking at the pension collections on Ancestry and Fold 3 that I mentioned previously, a few widows' pension records are available in our digital collections at archives.alabama.gov. You will note that these applications are extremely similar in format to those of the soldiers' applications. At the top of the application, the following description can be found. Under Act for the Relief of Needy Confederate Soldiers and Sailors, residents of Alabama who from wounds or other cause are unable to earn a livelihood, and for the widows of such as were killed or died in said war and have not since remarried, under Act approved February 18th, 1891, and as amended February 18th, 1895. The image on the left here gives you the veteran's name, B.M. Smith, as well as the applicant's name, his widow, Annie Smith. She is a resident of Lee County, Alabama. We also see that he served in Company K of the 1st Georgia Regiment. The sheet to the right tells us she was approved for Class 4 in the pension system, as widows were classified. Written in ink in the image on the left, we see the County of Lee noted at the top. Mrs. Annie Smith noted as the petitioner, confirmation that she is a resident of Lee County, then a note that she was the widow of B.M. Smith, who served as a private in Company K of the 1st Regiment Georgia Regular Volunteers. The next sentence provides his death date as being the 4th day of July 1901, which is great information for our research. The next page on the right here shows that she swore that the information on the previous page was correct. At the bottom of the page, we have an affidavit for witness to application of widows. This person is putting their stamp of approval on her statements and would need to be acquainted with her and her husband to be able to do so. Sometimes these affidavits are from neighbors. Sometimes they are from fellow veterans who served in the same regiment with the soldiers applying, or the widow's husband. Similar affidavits can be found in both soldiers' and widows' applications and provide potential for an additional research lead. This 1907 census example shown here provides the veteran's date of birth as well as the state and county of birth. We are also provided with the county and post office location of his current residence. His rank, date, and place of entry are noted, as well as the date, location, and circumstances regarding his service ending. In this case, the soldier was captured. Also included are blanks for re-enlistment information, if applicable. Confederate Census records taken in 1907 and 1921 are available on Ancestry.com. Newspapers.com can be an excellent source of additional information on your Civil War ancestry. Local papers sometimes did sketches of their citizens. Some soldiers wrote letters about their service that were published, and sometimes obituaries might provide details of the regiment and battles they were involved in. Newspapers.com can also show you what was being said about different battles as they occurred. Newspapers.com allows you to search by names, date, or date range and keyword. You can also search for specific papers and then look within that paper for your ancestor's name or other related information. Search for credible maps that show battle movements and key locations for the battles your ancestor served in. Always consider the source. The American Battlefield Trust has fantastic maps of battles from various wars, including the Civil War. Also check out ADAH's Maps database. And of course, these links will be provided in the comments as well. So at this point in the presentation, you may be wondering what Civil War related records have not yet been digitized and would require you to visit ADAH in order to view them. There are several resources that are not available online, including books for both genealogical and historical research, many unpublished journals, correspondence, and family papers. While some collections or portions of collections may be digitized, there are, of course, many that are not. The Deceased Alabama Confederate Soldiers Files, 1861 to 1865. These records can help provide brief information, such as the date and location of a soldier's death and the name of their next of kin. The Alabama Department of Archives and History Confederate Alabama and Home Guard Unit Files, 1860 to 1914 on microfilm, contains state militia and home guard muster rolls that are not available online. The Alabama Governor Applications for Military Service Exemptions, 1863 to 64, is a good resource for finding ancestors. And you can search all of our collections and databases by visiting our website, archives.alabama.gov/search COLL.html. Click on the catalog link to search for books and collections like those mentioned above. I wanted to share and perhaps repeat a few tips for finding Civil War records. Know what county your soldier was in before you start searching. You can use census records to determine where they lived. Consider checking pension records before you search service records or to clarify your service records search. If available, pension records can help determine which James Smith in the records is yours by helping you match county, wife's name, and regiment. Remember to search for alternate spellings of names. These spellings will not necessarily be the same on each record or type of records. Remember to look at dates of service on records. Soldiers often served in 2 or more regiments due to reenlistment, transfers, and consolidation of units. If you don't find your ancestor with an Ancestry.com search, be sure you have checked both of their databases that include Alabama pensions. Also search Fold 3. For pensions, also search for the widow's name as well as the soldier. Remember the restrictions on pension eligibility. Things that could disqualify applicants include but are not limited to the soldier's owning property of value, failing to prove poor health, or the widow remarrying. Restrictions such as these mean a pension would not have been given. Anytime you are doing online research, make sure to consider the source. Personal blogs and old, out-of-date websites that you might find in a Google search are definitely sources to be questioned. Any source that does not show you an image of the document and/or citations for where they found their information should be handled with care. Here is a list of resources that we have discussed today, as well as a few additional websites that you may find helpful in your research. All of these links will be loaded into the comments section for your convenience. Feel free to copy and paste these into a document and save for your future reference. We discussed the ADAH Alabama Civil War Service Database. Remember to search by last name only first. Willis Brewer's brief historical sketches of military organization raised in Alabama during the Civil War, and the National Park Service Soldiers and Sailors Database. The Family Search Confederate Service Records wiki page can be a helpful resource for learning more about service records and where to look for them in each state. Family Search United States Confederate Navy and Marine Service Records wiki page can provide further information about Navy and Marine service records and where to find them for each state. Also, the Family Search Alabama Civil War Service Records of Union Soldiers page can help answer questions you may have about Union records and how they can be obtained. The Family Search Pension Records wiki page includes Alabama and other states. For United States or Union pension records, you can visit the National Archives Pension Records information page at this link. A resource for learning more about the census of Confederate veterans in Alabama can be found with the Family Search Alabama Census of Confederate Veterans wiki page. You can visit our digital collections to view regimental history files for general histories of Confederate regiments that formed in Alabama. These files can be found in our digital collections or by going to the link listed here. For digitized copies of the official records of the War of the Rebellion, you can visit the Hathi Trust website or Internet Archive and do a search using the words War of the Rebellion. The War of the Rebellion volumes include official battle and campaign reports for following your ancestor service in detail or completing historical research. A Google search can show you which volumes contain the campaign or battle you are searching for. If you don't have time to sift through these records for yourself, please consider filling out a research request form on our website. One of our reference archivists will go through files in our collections, Fold 3, and Ancestry.com to give you a full look at your ancestor service. Depending on how long your ancestor served, and if all of the records survived the war, there can be many or few documents. And of course, here is the link for the research request form that can be found on our website. That will be in the comments as well. This wraps up today's research rundown. Thank you again for joining us. We should have some time for a few questions before we go, but if you think of any questions after the presentation, feel free to email me at kayla.scott@archives.alabama.gov. So let's see what questions we have. So what about muster rolls for Alabama militia units 1819 to 1860? So that is going to be part of the Home Guard files that I mentioned. Let's see, let me go back and find that link for you. That's one of the things that is actually not yet digitized. That is the Alabama Department of Archives and History, Confederate Alabama and Home Guard Unit Files, 1860 to 1914. So I believe that there are some pre 1860 materials in those files as well. Do we have any other questions? Is there any way we can find our soldiers' photos if they are on file? Unfortunately, there really weren't that many photographs taken unless they are in, a personal family collection. What we have, I believe, pretty much everything that is Civil War photographs, I believe those have been digitized and they're on our website. You can check Ancestry.com. Sometimes family members will have uploaded files of photographs that they had. But it's just really, really rare to find photographs for that period because of course, photography wasn't really something that was very common. So finding that is just really, really hard to find. I'm sorry, there's not a better answer, but I would suggest checking those sources just to be on the safe side. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank everyone again for joining us. I hope you learned something. I hope you found the presentation interesting, and we appreciate your time. Y'all have a wonderful day.